Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, former Arizona U.S. Senator and U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, Jeff Flake, joins us in studio. Also tonight, a filmmaker traveled the world asking people, are you happy? The answers are in his new documentary. And a new book explores the Minneapolis sound and the rise of Prince. Those stories and more next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. It's been nearly a month since the U.S. and Israel launched attacks against Iran. The resulting war has drawn in a number of countries in the region and let loose a global energy crisis as Iran continues to effectively close off the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. has reportedly sent Iran a 15-point peace plan, but Iran has publicly dismissed the overture, though reports are that Iranian officials are open to negotiations. Joining us now is former U.S. Senator and U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, Jeff Flake. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here.
I've missed it here.
Yeah, you know, we used to have you on all the time when you were, and I asked you beforehand, how do I address you? Because you've been a congressman, a senator, an ambassador, and you told me Ambassador Trump Senator, huh?
Ambassador, yeah, that's what the protocol books say.
Yeah, all right.
Ambassador takes over, I guess.
All right. Can I call you Jeff?
Jeff is better.
All right, sounds good. Overall thoughts on the U.S. and Israel's war on Iran?
Well, anything that weakens Iran is good for the region and for the world. So I am glad to see Iran weakened. Anybody who's spent any time in the region realizes the malignant force that Iran has been through funding its proxy forces around the region, its own instability, threat of nuclear weapons. It's been malign, and also to its own people, of course. Thousands, tens of thousands massacred there just for protesting against their government. So yeah, anything that weakens Iran is good.
How the war is being prosecuted, your thoughts there?
That I have some issues with. I really wish that the president would have gone to Congress, would have gone to our allies and built the case before we did it. Now, they might argue, hey, we had to take them, there's the element of surprise. We were amassing ships there for months. There wasn't much surprise there, and we would have been a lot better off now had we enlisted the support of our allies, brought them in from the beginning instead of asking them later. And then with Congress as well, you're just always better. Now, I'm not arguing, legalistically. The president had the ability. If he believes there's an imminent threat, he can go in. So I'm not arguing that. I'm just arguing for the wisdom of going to Congress and having some buy-in. And he could have got it. He could have had that had he gone to Congress and laid out the intelligence that he had if it really was compelling.
What good, though, what power does the War Powers Act have if the War Powers Act isn't needed if a president decides it's time to go into X, Y, and Z unilaterally?
Well, we can argue that from the cows till the cows come home. I tried desperately the entire time I was in the Senate with Tim Kaine on the Democratic side to revise it, really knowing that we weren't going to change the War Powers Act, but to revise our use of military force, the AUMF, the authorization for use of military force, just to get better buy-in, because Congress has just very lazily said, we're going to blame the president, but we're not going to, take any responsibility. So it's easy for Congress to rely on the current way that we're doing it, but it's not a good system. If you're going to send, Americans to war, you ought to have the Congress, the people's representatives, informed and involved, because that makes us far more strong.
Yeah, you refer to the allies and talking to allies first as opposed to shooting first and asking for help later. But the president and the administration, the bashing of allies, the continued bashing of allies, what are your thoughts on that? Again, as an ambassador to Turkey, you know that region, you know the area, you know our friends over there. Right. What do you expect? What did we expect from our friends when we were told they're not friends anymore?
I'm just blown away at that. I mean, there are some challenging allies. Turkey is a challenging ally. They're powerful. They're the second biggest military in NATO. We need them. They've been a good partner and a good ally. They were right with us in Afghanistan for 20 years. They've been with us in every conflict. They're a challenging ally. The rest of Europe really isn't. I mean, they're with us. They're with us on just about everything. And instead, we're ridiculing them. We're talking about taking over sovereign territory with Greenland and doing this kind of thing that really offends those allies that have been with us through thick and thin and aren't challenging allies. They should be easy allies. But I am troubled. I was in Geneva a few months ago. This is after being ambassador and talking to somebody I used to work with quite a bit. Geneva is the European home of the UN. And he was saying, it used to be that we would wait for the U.S. to take a position in these international fora. He said, we don't wait anymore. We just do it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a brag or a boast. It was a lament that we need U.S. leadership. And we're just kind of letting it go. And it's really unfortunate in that way.
Again, back to the prosecution of the war, do you think that the U.S. in general, the administration in particular, understand the mindset of folks in the Middle East, of folks particularly in Iran? Do we understand that, flying planes overhead and bombing here, there, and everywhere, that might affect us in a certain way.
Right.
It might not affect them in a certain way.
Right. Well, I think that's clear when the president, said this will be over quickly. It's just we've won, but Iran is still able to prosecute the war. They're still bedeviling our allies in the region and making it difficult and impossible for people to traverse the straits. So yeah, that was a miscalculation, or it was just a boast and thinking we could bully. But it's different there. Once we have never had there's no example of regime change anywhere with our air power alone. Since we've had air power, that alone has not forced regime change. And thinking that we could do it here was folly. And so it's going to take far more than that if we're up for it, if that's what we're planning to do, and we haven't really got a clear sense from the administration yet if that's what we're really after.
Well, we got a couple thousand paratroopers set to go. We're building forces over there, and it sounds and again, as you mentioned, regime change is one thing, but keeping that change in regime, some sort of boots will have to be on the ground even after the change, would it not?
Yeah, I think an apt analogy is in Afghanistan. Obviously, the public, most people there resented the Taliban for the draconian, tough rule that they enforced prior to our entry there, and now again. But that doesn't mean that the people are going to take over and rise up. In Iran, that's a difficult thing to do. You have the Quds Force, you have paramilitaries, you have other forces that are going to make it very difficult.
The idea for those in support of the war, they see this as an opportunity for there to be a new Middle East. And we have seen major changes over there with some of the Arab countries not at war with Israel, the constant war. And yet, with Iran and the position that we're seeing right now, is that a naive thing to say that we can do this?
Like I said, anything that weakens Iran is good for the region, and we may be in for certainly a better period going forward. But the notion that Iran is simply going to be compliant and do whatever we want them to, and that we can somehow control the straits without them being involved. And one thing that just kind of bothers me too, particularly having been in a diplomatic position for 3 years, is the notion that we can do this without diplomacy. This is going to end with diplomacy. It is. We're going to sit down and negotiate in terms of the straits and how we open them, because it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, ever to really control that. You can control the shoreline, but with modern warfare, you can do it from inland. And so that's a difficult thing to do.
It feels like we're in this for the long haul, whether we know it or not.
We may be. I mean, and that's what I think that's what the markets are worried about, and all of us, certainly. There is it's easier to get in than out. And someone who was there for the launching of a couple of wars, I certainly realize that.
And my last question is regarding that. As ambassador to Turkey, you know the region very well. You know Turkey really well, and Turkey apparently is trying to be responsible in some way, shape, or form with the negotiations, such as they are. How are we seen there, in Turkey in particular? But I know you go around the world. You're a globetrotter, and you talk to a lot of folks around the world. How are we seen?
You know, a lot of it is not warranted. You know, they see kind of the big brother, and some of that is warranted, the way we act and believe that we can go in and topple anybody and change things. But we have liberated most of the world. There's still those feelings. If you look at Turkey, you know, there is that, you know, resentment of the big brother atmosphere. But if you ask the average Turk, do you want to be like the Russians or the Americans? Mm-hmm. They want to be like Americans. They value their NATO security umbrella and their affiliation there. So people want to be with us. They want U.S. leadership, but they don't want the U.S. bullying and basically like the Greenland issue.
Yeah.
They don't like that, and that puts us in a very poor position internationally. And right now, if we had gone to our allies first, this issue with closing the Straits of Hormuz, you want it to be Iran, the regime, against the West and the world, not Iran against the U.S., and can pick certain allies to play off against us. And that's why you need to go to your allies and work with them.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned, diplomacy will rear its head in one way, shape, or form, won't it?
Yeah. It will.
Jeff Flake, again, Ambassador Flake, Senator Flake, Congressman Flake, you've been all over the world and all over the map. It's good to have you here.
Great to be here, Ted.
Hi, I'm Ken Burns. You may know Henry David Thoreau as the man who lived at Walden Pond, but his story goes far beyond that, shaping how we think about nature, society, and ourselves. Watch our newest film, Henry David Thoreau, by Eric and Christopher Lauren Ewers, here on Arizona PBS.
We came across this intriguing story.
Things are starting to get going.
Are you prepared?
It is a golden opportunity.
It's not over.
It will be all that you've dreamed of.
I'm a young person who found Martha Graham and fell in love with it.
Dancing appears glamorous, easy, but the path is not easier than any other.
Martha Graham, a woman of great mystery and talent.
To be a Graham dancer is a beautiful thing.
Friday night at 8 on Arizona PBS.
Just off I-10 in the town of Quartzsite stands a pyramid gravestone to a curious name still celebrated in these parts, Haji Ali. Haji Ali was actually Haji Ali, a Greek-Syrian immigrant who came to the United States in 1856. He worked for the Army as the caretaker of a herd of animals being used in an experiment aimed at establishing a new way to transport goods across the southwestern deserts, by camel. The Civil War ended the Army's fascination with the camels, and they were turned loose in the desert. Haji Ali remained a faithful Army scout for some 30 years and died in Quartzsite in 1902. Wild camels were spotted in Arizona as late as 1935, and some believe they still roam the desert. A haunting and romantic legacy of Haji Ali, whose monument still attracts thousands of visitors every year.
Atkay Trepka is a filmmaker who traveled to 30 countries over 5 years asking people a simple question: are you happy? The variety of responses make up a new documentary titled, oddly enough, Are You Happy? We welcome filmmaker Atkay Trepka to Arizona Horizon. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
All right. It's really good to have. This was fascinating to me because you you quit your job, drove around the country, and then drove around the world asking a simple question. What was the inspiration for this?
Yeah, I mean, we live in a crazy world, and happiness seems to be on this very wide spectrum nowadays. And as a filmmaker, I wanted to pursue my own projects and try to uncover some layer of truth. So I, like you said, I quit my job and packed my car with all my stuff, drove across the country, and asked random strangers that simple but powerful question.
Yeah. And how did you decide who to ask? I mean, was this anyone you found on the street? Were there people you went, I think they might be interesting?
Yeah, it was random people on the street, but after I asked them if they were happy, I asked them to guide me to the next person. I asked them to tell me where to go next. So one person guided the next person.
Yeah. Did you, in any way, shape, or form, define happy?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten thousands of answers by this point over 5 years, and really it boils down to perspective, how you view things that happen to you in your life. Do you choose to view them as a negative or a positive? So, although it might be a divisive thing to say, eventually happiness is really a choice.
It sounds as though you got, now correct me if I'm wrong here, that you got a little more on the no side than the yes side. Is that true?
It really depends on where I was or the time or what year I was asking people. During COVID, a lot of people were unhappy, certainly. But there were times where, or certain countries where people didn't define their happiness by what was happening in the world. Instead, they defined it by their 5 mile radius, their community, and their family.
Did that surprise you?
I think at the surface it surprised me, but when you look at it objectively, I think it's pretty clear that if you let your happiness be affected by things that are happening thousands of miles away that are totally out of your control, it's a pretty hard life to live. But if you define it by, again, the 5 mile radius around you, then I've learned that's the true source of happiness.
All answers apparently were somewhat local. I found it fascinating as well that themes like wanting to be loved, don't want to be left alone, want to be understood, don't want to suffer, these came up over and over, didn't they?
Yeah, and we go throughout our lives thinking we're the only people that deal with these issues, but in reality, we're all quietly struggling and suffering with very, very similar issues.
Yeah,
and I feel like the documentary unveils that.
Yeah. But again, it sounds as though when they had a chance to reflect or maybe take a pause back, they were grateful as well.
100%. During the documentary, you'll see people, for example, I met a woman, when I first asked her if she was happy, she said yes. I kept probing a little bit. She took off her sunglasses and she had this big black eye, and she was going through some serious issues, but still throughout our conversation, she found a perspective and a way to still find true happiness.
What made you put some of these responses on TikTok? And again, were you surprised that once these videos got out there, it exploded?
I was certainly surprised. In fact, I tried to get traditional distribution for this documentary with no luck. I said, you know what? I'll just post a couple clips on social media. I forgot about it. A couple hours later, each of the videos had gotten about 1,000 views, and it hit me. I said, wait a second, that's 4,000 or 5,000 people that just saw clips from my documentary. This could be a big thing. So I kept going with it. And within about a week, we had 10 million views.
I was going to say, you got like the 15 million views a month and something like this going on now?
Yeah, now 6 years later, thousands of interviews later, we have over 5 million followers and reach about 15 million people per month.
I know you do a lot of interviews on this, and I know you've been asked a lot of questions, but I'm guessing you've been asked this one before. I'm going to ask it anyway. Are you happy?
I'm certainly happy, Ted. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be alive, and I'm happy to have beautiful wife and 2 beautiful baby boys.
Have you always been that happy?
Well, I would be lying if I said I've always been this happy. I think I've dealt with normal struggles and pain and grief throughout my life. But again, I choose to look at it through a positive lens. I choose to have a positive perspective, and it's hard to be unhappy when you've got such a loving support system and family around you like I have.
And again, some of the people that you ask, many of the people that you ask, time of life, time of experience, very much a factor in their responses. Atyeh Trepka, again, Are You Happy is a documentary. Congratulations on all your success and continued success. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a good day.
A new book looks at the history of music in Minneapolis, the city that launched Prince, among others, to stardom. The book is titled Prince's Minneapolis, a biography of sound and place. Journalist Steve Goldstein recently sat down with the book's author, Rashad Shabazz.
And Dr. Rashad Shabazz, welcome back to Arizona Horizon. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So with the book, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, and I'm sure there isn't a particular percentage, but how much of Minneapolis influenced Prince, and how much did Prince end up influencing Minneapolis and the sound that came out of it?
Prince was tremendously influenced by Minneapolis. Prince's sound was really made up of 4 basic music forms: rhythm and blues, funk. These were played in North and South Minneapolis, which were historically Black Minneapolis, and then punk and indie rock, which were played downtown, which was particularly white. And what he was able to do was to stitch those 4 music forms together, and it created an endless landscape for him to explore his Minneapolis sound, which was a combination of all of those 4 sounds. Plus, he could explore all of those genres independently.
So I'm going to jump around a little bit, but that leads me to the next question, which is, do you think he is appreciated to the extent that he should be because of what you just said? Because there are people who, I think by virtue of what he looks like, people think back to Purple Rain, oh, he's this kind of musician. But if you watch his progression after he achieved fame, remarkable how many genres he was in.
So Prince is, I think, deeply underappreciated. So he's recognized as one of the great musicians of all time, which is sort of easy in terms of his ability, but he's also one of the greatest composers ever. And I would argue that he is the most important musician in American history. And here's why. Prince was able to do what no other musician was able to do musically, which was to sort of stitch different parts of American music genres together. But he was able to do it in a time of deep contention and division. The Minneapolis music scene was actually produced through decades of segregation that happened in Minneapolis that moved Black people to one part of the city, white people to another, and in all of those different geographies, there were different sounds. Downtown and other parts of the city, white musicians were able to play. Uptown or North Side and the South Side, Black musicians played, and they were different genres. Prince came up in the Black side of the city, and what he did is he heard the entire city. He heard downtown, he heard uptown, he heard the South Side, and he heard the North Side. And by the time he was 17 years old, he was able to stitch them together. And this is what he was able to do. He could take the funk. He could take the bass lines from funk, which was uptown and downtown. He could take the falsetto vocals of uptown and downtown. He could take the indie rock guitar riffs from downtown, and he could also take the percussive funk rhythms from downtown, and he could stitch them all together. Plus, he could independently play all of the kinds of music. And in that way, he does more than what Michael Jackson and Bruce and Madonna were able to do. He was able to demonstrate the diversity of American music and demonstrate why the diversity of our music is so unique. And also, he was able to bring them together to create something new, which was the Minneapolis sound.
Relatively short answer on this one, please. His parents were both musicians, right?
That's right.
So how much of it for him was nature and how much was nurture?
So it was both, right? His parents were both musicians, so he heard music at home. It was part of his everyday landscape, but he also lived in a musical community. He lived in a community where the school system helped to teach music. He lived in a community where being part of a band was a normal thing. So he had this really interesting musical community around him, both at home and at school.
Another question I wanted to ask you is related to his fame, which was obviously enormous, but I think, I'm going to guess that a lot of people, middle America, folks who may not have been naturally Prince fans, were drawn to what many have called the greatest performance in Super Bowl halftime history. How much of an impact do you think that had?
It was tremendous. It was the greatest performance that we've ever seen. You know, no disrespect
Playing
to Bad
through the rain.
Bunny. No disrespect to Bad Bunny, but you know, it rained and he was epic. But that's what a genius musician does, right? You know, like this is what a genius musician does. But he also demonstrated why he was the most important musician in this country. He played different genres. He played different kinds of music. He focused on instrumentation as well as vocals. No one could have done that, and only Prince could have done that.
We just have a very few seconds left, but I want to ask briefly about how you wrote the book, because one thing we talked about before we started taping was the idea that you're known for a certain area of expertise as a professor and with your PhD, but you actually wanted to understand the music. Can you give me 30 seconds on that?
I took several years to learn music theory so that I could talk about the sound in a sophisticated, meaningful way. And also I took many years of studying how music critics write about music so that I could write about it in an efficient, effective way. And that's what constituted the book.
So impressive. Dr. Rashad Shabazz, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Because kids will always be more curious, Arizona PBS delivers programs that serve as a trusted guide for little explorers. Thanks to you and
So many Arizonans